I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm glad to talk with you guys. Students on this side? There you go. Okay, great. I'm going to try not to isolate anybody. I love what I do, and I think back to Syracuse and my time here, and the future ahead of me. It's what I wanted to do then. I still love what I do, and I still can't wait for the next 20 years I have left. Actually, in 15, 20 years, we'll see. Unless Ben picks me up one of these days. But, it is an amazing profession, local government management. And I'm amazed that more people don't go into it. And there's a lot of opportunity. So I want to talk about, I'll talk about our profession first. I'm going to show you a few contextual slides that I put up here. And then, let me sit over here. And then I'll talk to you about what we do and how we do it. So that is Pismo Beach. So we're a town of about 9,000 people year-round and about 50,000 in the summer. So we scale up pretty big, and you can see there it's a beautiful place. Those are our sunsets, and if you go just over those hills, about 10 minutes in, it's wine country. So that's the Edna Valley wine country, and we're nestled between Santa Maria Valley and Paso Robles wine country. So wine's our top, tourism's our top industry. Wine is our top agricultural crop, followed by strawberries. So that didn't come in very well, but that's downtown Pismo Beach, just off the pier. So it's full of restaurants, shops. It's really kind of a very classic California is kind of what we bill ourselves as, and indeed it is with the neon and the wide sidewalks and the wonderful Mediterranean climate. Cars that cruise through, and just it's a wonderful. So being a city manager, there's good days. That's the city council and I cutting the ribbon on our new fire station and fire engine. Those are the good days. And they're bad days. So when our community, thank God, wasn't one of the ones that burned in California last year, but I was very involved with those who did, providing support to their community, sending officers, fire departments, and myself. As a city manager, you also serve as the director of emergency services in your community. So most people don't realize that. And so when it hits the fan, everybody looks to you and goes, now what? And you're actually chairing the emergency operations center and making sure the community returns to normalcy. So your first priority is to end the disaster and then get people back to normalcy. And so that was when I was working in Santa Rosa after the fires, helping them for a little bit. I drove through some neighborhoods and it was just devastating. This was a flood at City Hall. So this was 2 years ago, and our finance department and IT areas and tourism were completely flooded from the second floor down. And it's days like this where as a city manager, you're the leader of the staff. How do you motivate people? How do you encourage them? How do you get them to focus less on that and more on the future? So it was just kind of a typical day. And then this is my colleagues and the council member as we're moving towards a sustainable water supply. I'm really big on recycled water, and we're well underway on our recycled water facility. And that was a media event where we proved that the water was not only safe to drink, but tasted better than regular tap water. And so recycled water, as you may know, is where you treat the water to a tertiary level. At the sewage basically goes through your sewage plant. First treatment, second treatment, third treatment is through microfiltration and UV light, and you put it back in the ground and pull it out 60 days later as fresh water. So that was just a taste test. So anyway, that's a little bit about where I'm from. I'll leave that behind me as I chat with you guys. So I think government in general, we need more good people. People are so frustrated with government right now, and the challenges seem so great, and it's so polarizing and so hard, frankly. But that to me is very attractive because I love local government because local government is where it meets the road. And you think of the services we provide, right? We provide public safety. We provide the streets you drive on, the water you drink, this treatment of water, culture and recreation, a sense of place. We protect property values. We protect people. We bring people together. I was sharing with Professor O'Keefe at lunch that there are national problems that we have decided not to fix or can't deal with because we're so jammed up. That doesn't mean those problems go away. They just go down. And so then you have states are struggling. My state is completely dysfunctional, in my opinion. And so then when it gets down to immigration, well, who's handling that? Whether you agree on either side of the debate, if we're ordered to pick up people, or they're not there legally, or they're commit a crime, or what do we do? It's the local police that are going, what do we do here? What do we do with homelessness? When we touch the people in the encampments, we see the families sleeping in their cars. How do you have compassion for that? How do you make sure you have to deal with where do we find a place for them so they can get back to school and get on their feet? While the state and federal government sit and banter about it, I have a family right in front of me and I have to figure it out. And that to me is very attractive about city government, is in the end of the day, we have to figure it out. I think city government still works too. I think city government's a corporate model. And that's what I find attractive. You're the CEO of the company as a city manager. And so I don't know if you realize that or not, but most people don't know that city government functions. The legislature is the city council. And it's kind of weird because I serve at the pleasure of the legislature, and so they can get rid of me any given day. However, you're the executive, right? All the staff report to you, the police chief, the fire chief, the public works director, the parks and rec director, everybody, and you're responsible for administering government. And that's cool. It's cutting edge. It's exciting. When you see something you want to get done, you can do it. You need to change the law, you throw it on the council agenda 2 weeks later, and there you go, as opposed to waiting 6 months for it to work through 2 houses and get gummed up and blah, 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 blah. So I call local government little g government. It works, and I think it's the one level that still works, and I'm proud to be part of a government that works. I think local government's engaging, and I have something called Dish It Out with the city every month, and I'll go to a different restaurant, a different coffee house, and to sit and talk with people and get in there and engage with them and learn and listen and see how can we make their quality of life better. So I think as a city manager, you're a CEO, you're a leader of the staff. You have I have 150 people that work for me that I get to encourage and grow up and mentor and coach and invest in, which is a perfect size organization for me. You're a strategist as you look to how you invest your financial and human capital and make those recommendations to the council. You live in the policy world because all the recommendations for new laws and new procedures come through the city manager. I have a professional staff that advise me, and then I recommend those at the city council meeting and present every item to the city council as my recommendation as the best thing to do. And so there's so many different facets to the job. Every damn day is different. One day you got to be a water expert. One day you got to be a public safety expert. One day you got to, when there's a police situation, you hope it's not yours, but you have to understand, did the police act appropriately or not? And did they respond appropriately or not? When there's national or disasters of great significance, you're the person that has to figure out how to deal with that. You're the person that invests and protects cultural treasures and historic preservation. Every day is something different. So if you like diversity in your career, this is a good job for you. If you like to see action, this is a good job for you. If you like to work with leaders of a community and elected officials, so our council in most California city councils are part-time. So they're not compensated. They get a small stipend for their time. And so I enjoy working with public board members who have a vision for their community and trying to help them make their community the best you can be. So anyway, that's a little bit about city management, about myself and how I got there. I knew I wanted to be a city manager from a very young age. I was involved in student council in high school, and I loved it. And I just liked serving and working with people. And I thought I was going to go to college to be studying medicine and be a doctor, and that I'd be civically involved. But it turns out I went to a youth and government day, and each of the department heads came out and talked about their professions, and the city manager was last. And he talked about a blend of politics and business, and I was just bit by that. So since then, I've known I wanted to do that. So when you leave Maxwell, part of the challenge is if you choose this as a career, many of your friends will have a job in December with Deloitte or those kind of firms. Then the next round of jobs kind of doles out in February, March, and then it gets around to April, May, and you're biting your fingernails and everybody else is like happy and you're like, oh God, am I gonna get it? And that's when you apply for city jobs. So you're kind of the end of the cycle, which is challenging. He laughed because he knew I was bouncing around like a cat on a tin roof when I was here trying to work out my job. But there's a lot of great opportunities, especially coming from this school. And there's several Maxwell people in California and in other states, wherever you choose to go. I heard, well, you guys need to introduce yourselves to me. I just jumped right in. So I think one of the things about local government, if you work at the national level, you're very hyper-focused on a very small, specific policy likely that influences a very broad group of people that could take you years to implement. In local government, you're very broad in all the areas you can touch and engage in, but it's a smaller group of people. So it just depends what your scale of impact is. I'd like to think, though, that if you're, and Ben and I were talking about this morning, depending on the type of leader you are, and I think as city manager, you are a leader. It's interesting, you never want to eclipse the city council and the mayor because it's their community, and that's how city managers get fired. However, you can position yourself to be very loyal to them and have them lift you up. And it's okay if that's happening, as long as you're not lifting yourself up. And so when you have a team relationship with your city council and you're truly on the same page, that allows you to speak up at the county and state level about policies that you have demonstrated in your city and how they're working. So just because you're only at a city level doesn't mean you can't be effective at the county and state level. I'm in Sacramento monthly testifying on housing policies that we're doing in our water project and on different things that I would like to think others will be motivated by. And so you do have that ability if you're bold in your leadership style and you take risk and but we were saying every day is hard. But in your own heart, if you know you're doing the right thing and you have a good compass and you want to change and you want to fight for what you believe is right, it's well worth it. But every day you come home feeling accomplished, but feeling like you got kicked in the mouth. I mean, it's hard. It's not for wimps, public service, especially at the local level, but it is amazing what you can accomplish. So I'll tell you, let me go back to kind of a progression if you want to end up in city management, my career progression, and then I'll talk to you about some of the cool challenges I'm working on and how I'm addressing some of these issues that were important to all of you. And then we'll do questions. Does that sound good? Yeah, 2:27. Okay, so I came out of here as something called a management analyst. A management analyst is a entry-level management position in a city. By the way, I'm very partial to council manager government. I think when you look at the big problems in big cities, the boroughs or others, a city should not be run by a elected politician. I vehemently disagree with that. Cities are complicated. They're engineering marvels. They provide services. They own utilities. They give and take away rights, God forbid, in difficult situations. They have emergency response. These are hard. You're learning this stuff. It's technical. It's hard. And so to have a chief executive officer that is professionally trained to ensure good government and accountability and efficiency but then reports to the political entity, I think, because my direction has to come from elected people. That's democracy. I get that. But having the execution of said policy through a trained executive is the way to go. And I think when you look at big cities, I answer to the city council, but the way I answer is with results. An elected official answers with popularity, let's be honest. Big difference. And so that's why I'm such a firm believer in the council manager form of government that came about in 1918 as a result of government reforms from Woodrow Wilson. And so we used to have a long ballot and the union bosses and and as city problems got so severe, homelessness, open sanitary sewer in the streets, sickness, they realized that a technician had to run government. So that's kind of where we came from. So when you come out of here, you'd apply for a job. One of the management assistant jobs are great. Long Beach has a great one. Phoenix, Arizona has a great one. Many of the big cities have them. They're very competitive, but coming out of Maxwell, you're going to have a foot up. So the management assistant programs, management analyst, preferably if you are in your home area is where I would look, unless you really want to get out to California or get out to, California's crazy right now. I'll speak to that. It's scary, some of the policies we're adopting, and we're also cutting edge in some of the policies we're adopting. I guess it depends on your view. But it's definitely a challenging place. If you want to buckle your seatbelt and have a good time, we're crazy. So come on out to California. But nonetheless, I think where you have your relationships and where you'll have for better or for worse, getting into a good job in local government can be a little parochial. What do you know about our community? Where are you from? Except for the big assistant programs, which are excellent. ICMA also has a few fellowships that are terrific. They'll put you in the key thing is when you leave here that you're in a good organization. It's more important you're with a good organization than the place you're in. And if you can marry those two, that's amazing. You don't want to get stifled. You don't want to get pigeonholed. You want to be connected to a very bright leader that mentors you and lifts you up and gives you exposure to projects in your first 2 years. That's really important, more important than what you'll make. Because if you have those experiences, you will make. Now, so coming out of here, if you're an analyst, I'll say in California, our salaries are inflated because everything's inflated. So is our ego, damn it. I'm not high on California, as you can tell. I'm high in our cities, but you'll come out making 65, 70,000. So it's not so bad to start out, and you'll be able to afford life in California at that on your own. So you can quickly move that up. So you'll be a management analyst for a few years, 2-3 years. You might be a senior analyst. What does that do? They usually work for a department head. So you'd work for the police chief or the public works director or the parks and rec director, director of culture and historical preservation, depending on how big the city is. And you're their support. So you'll write their staff reports. You'll write, as the city manager says, we need to move this direction, execute a law that says this. You'll write that law. You'll work with your director on it. You might manage a number of special projects. You might even manage some employees yourself. And my first career, I was a management analyst in the community services department in Claremont, which is just east of Pasadena. It's a city of about 45,000 people. I oversaw the administrative staff of the department. So we had an accounting person, a clerical person, and an executive assistant, and the interns. And then I oversaw public transportation. So we had 4 city buses and a public transportation supervisor, and then I oversaw the regional efforts for rail and light rail to the city. I oversaw, believe it or not, the municipal cemetery. That was really bizarre, but I did, so I learned a lot about this. Is back to what you learn. The death industry is fascinating. I'm not going to spend time on that, but it's very interesting. And the cemetery was going bankrupt and sucking off the city's general fund, and I had to fix that. And so I had to actually correct, and that was where it was entrepreneurial. How could I take a city asset and market it correctly and understand the death industry and make it profitable? And we were able to quickly do that and also make it that it was self-sustainable. So when you go back to visit great grandma, the grass isn't brown. Nothing pisses people off more than that. And so it's one of those things you'd never think of, but that's one of the things you touch in local government. And so I did all that in emergency services. And then I quickly moved over to the city manager's office as the assistant to the city manager, which is like the chief of staff. Great job. So you don't have anyone report to you, but it's your job to make sure the department heads are doing their job and that they're in step with the city manager, that their legislative agendas are correlating to the city council. I oversaw the commissions. I wrote the city budget and enforced the city budget to make sure people were spending within their bits and not transferring money funny. I did intergovernmental affairs and all the business development for the city. So that was a great job. I had that 4 years out of Maxwell. So that was a really great job. That job at the time, though today it'd probably pay about $125,000 a year. Very good wage as assistant to the city manager. And then from there, I did leave Claremont. So I was in Claremont for 7.5 years and moved to Atascadero, which is just north of Pismo Beach, to be assistant city manager. Your assistant city managers make anywhere from $140,000 to $210,000 a year in California. So that's basically the chief operating officer of a city. And that's what I did. So the departments all reported to me. I was responsible for the city's operation to free the manager up to deal with the politics, the community, the strategic side of things. And then I also did economic development for my community. That's where I still live now. And then I've been a city manager for 8 years. So city managers in California make anywhere from $175,000 to $350,000 a year. So it's very lucrative. You have full benefits for your family. Usually you have a long-term disability policy, full insurance, your deferred compensation. As a city manager, you most always have a contract with the city council. So while people get nervous, I don't want a job that I get fired tomorrow. Well, the good news is when you're kind of your own boss, if you get fired, it's probably your fault. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes the community will elect an entirely different council and they want to pick their own person and you're out. And that's just how it goes. But hopefully, if you've been playing your cards right politically and delivering wins for the community, the council doesn't get unelected. Hopefully, you keep the community calm and you listen and you engage appropriately, where citizen engagement is important. And you have a pulse on the community so you can deliver wins for your city council so the council doesn't change. So that's the goal. That's how the system, I'm totally loyal to our city council. They hire me and I want to deliver wins for them. So that's been my progression. So it's a terrific line of work. It tends to be flexible in city government. So one day if you have a family and you want to go see your kid's soccer game or go to the Cub Scout meeting, you can. In our organization, we have culture is very important to me. I spend probably 5 to 10% of my time on culture alone, whether that's interviewing people, walking around the city, talking with people, planning leadership days for all of our employees. We do an annual retreat where we close down all city operations, have our neighboring city come help so we can actually come together as a city family and celebrate our wins and talk through the year. developing our leaders, putting academies together. I'd like to try and do a lot of that for our employees. So anyway, you'll have time and ability to do that. So that's how I ended up where I am. Challenges. So challenges I'm working on, number one, homelessness and affordability are huge issues in California. And so, as a social policy, if you think you want to help house people, or you feel for homeless people, or you feel for this pandemic of people who can't get a leg up, you can go work for nonprofits and come up with ideas, or you can go, those are very good things. I don't want to take away from them. But where I sit, so I serve on our county's homeless task force, and we're the wealthiest city in the county. As you can see, our average home price is about $950,000. That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. That's probably 1,200 square feet. So many of our homes are $2, $3, $4 million and then up. And so while that doesn't mean we're not going to contribute to that situation. And so I am very involved. I think that when you talk homeless, what I try and articulate is who is it we're trying to help. Because it's easy to put all the homeless people in a box, and that's not the case. There are criminally homeless people. There are mentally ill homeless people, and they all need to be helped differently. There are those who choose to be a hobo. Some people want to be a vagabond. They don't like society. They don't like people. They have a cell phone. They sneak in and charge it once a day. They have a small pension but they want to be homeless. They want to be off the grid. And so when we try and help them, we just badger them. And then there are those who had a financial crisis that didn't have the social support and lost their apartment and they're the people. So it's like, how do you, once you start to isolate those and then focus on what policy helps each, how do we further invest in the correct mental health? How do we invest in building housing and creating opportunities for people to get a foot up so they can get transitional housing? And so I'm really proud that our city is working on a 60, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a 60 low income, 15 transitional housing, a cool housing village at the entrance to our city. And I want to show everyone else that if we can do it in our community, you can do it in yours. I'm tired of rich and tourism communities saying it's not our problem. It damn well is your problem. It's all of our problem. And so that's the kind of thing, as a local city manager, I can show communities across California that we can do it, and so should you. My efforts were recognized by our governor. I was invited to a group of about 24 people when the governor was first elected to actually pick our brains on why cities aren't building housing. The governor knows I'm not a fan of his. We've had words in the press together, and so I called him polite things in the press that weren't really good for him, but I really didn't care because I think I was tired of him bashing cities and conveniently blaming the housing problem on cities, when that's not true. The state has issues, home builders have issues, and so trying to work through all of that and have that state platform has been helpful. So those are the opportunities you have if you're just a city manager, doesn't mean you only work on local issues. That's my point. Environmental issues. So while I do believe the climate is different today, I'm not going to debate climate change. I think every side of the political spectrum is using it to its own advantage, which is unfortunate. California is windier, it is hotter, and we have greater fires. For some reason or another, that is true in my experience. And while we're not seeing the sea level rise in Pismo Beach and science, I'm not so sure. What I do know is when the ice caps melt, the Gulf Stream is destabilized, and that's creating different weather patterns. That as a more conservative thinker, I would still argue. We can argue that later, but that's true. And when my insurance company actually calls me and says, we're going to be rating communities different because of changing weather patterns and exposure, that tells me also facts show something's true. So I think we need to be more cognizant of changing weather patterns and how we plan our community. And so back to environmental, in California, we have lots of sun. Solar panels are cheap. Battery technology's come a long way. Why do we use fossil fuel to power our city facilities? It makes no sense. Now, I made an economic decision. 7 years from now, we'll have paid off. We just moved to solar for all of our facilities 2 years ago. Pays itself off in about 7.5 years. So whether I believe in that or not, I've reduced our carbon footprint significantly as a community and encouraged others to do the same. So I just finished a term as president of the California City Managers Group. And I've used that bully pulpit to push for some of these things to city managers across the state and say, whether you believe in it or not, I'm going to stop paying PG&E $300,000 a year in 7 years. By the way, I can't stand that company. I'll say that on the tape. I've said it in the media. I don't mind if they tape me because I'm not saying anything I don't say in the news. I'm very vocal, as you can tell, on TV. But you know what? People want that. People want candid, honest, straight-talking city officials. They're tired of the blah, 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 blah. They want you to hear them, repeat what you heard, empathize, show them some passion, and go fix it. They pay you to fix it, and they pay you to be honest. And so anyway, that's my soapbox. But I've been trying to say, whether you believe in it or not, it's good for the environment and it saves you a bunch of money. So I am pushing for solar. I am pushing battery technology. I am pushing for some of the investment in electric vehicles. I think some of that's getting a little overboard, but I think there's some reasonable investment. I'm a big believer in recycled water. Whether we have droughts or not, I believe we will have more out my way. There's no reason we shouldn't do it. It is going to cost our ratepayers about $10 a month more, but what's a cheap insurance policy for sustainable water? Why am I putting out 1.5 million gallons of secondary treated water into the ocean every year? I don't know if it's good or bad for the ocean. It's not good, that's for sure. I don't know how bad it is, but it's not good. And what a wasted resource. We could put that back into the groundwater basin and protect our groundwater basin so in drought we're sustainable. Now you could argue, do I get an environmental award for that? Well, we should. It's very healthy to sustain our groundwater basin, to stop putting polluted water treated water into the ocean, which is our biggest asset, mind you. So I can say I'm selfish too from a business standpoint. If a person says, why are you spending all this money on environmental crap or whatever? I'll say, well, the biggest asset we have is our beach and our ocean. So getting A+ water quality ratings from the Surfrider Foundation because we clean our water sells, keeps hotel rates up. You can look at it that way. You can also look at it as, because we're a tourism community, when there's drought in California and drought in the valley, I don't want to have to tell people who are spending $400 a night on a hotel room they have to take a 2-minute shower. That doesn't work. And so having water sustainability there also serves it from a business standpoint. But so on environmental issues, I think setting an example for your community and your county and how you reduce your energy use, how you treat your water, how you encourage non-automotive transportation, how you set policies that do that. Those are things you can do at the local level. But see, that's what's amazing about city government, guys. I can become an expert in water and environmental policy. We haven't even talked about criminal justice, homelessness. I have to deal with these things. There's no one else to pass it on to. And I think that's amazing. It's fun. So other than that, the pension problem, California is not the worst state. You read about it the most because we're $7 trillion, our pension system, across the nation, public pensions. And I'm very involved with that and pension reform and shoring up pension and shoring up those benefits. So I think we in California got a little proud of ourselves and awarded ourselves some pretty fat pensions in the 90s and early 2000s. Those are coming to roost. They are unsustainable. And so I do spend a lot of time in Sacramento at CalPERS headquarters. I'm on the CEO's kitchen cabinet trying to shape pension reform in California, which I believe then should also be pension reform for Illinois and pension reform for Washington and pension reform for Virginia and some of these other states that have had challenges. So again, hopefully having a national impact at a local level. Have I covered all the topics you were hoping? Questions? Want to catch my breath? You hate my job, you can tell, right?
Sure. Can you talk a little bit more about what it's like to have a city that only has 8,000 people in the winter and then managing that like 6 times
Sure.
the size of the city in the summer?
So
what do you have to do to scale that up?
Yeah, it's what are your excess employees doing when you're 8,500 people, right? And that's kind of how you. And so we're very blessed that because we are a wealthier city, because when you look at how a city's financed, cities are financed through property tax, but in California, they're all different. In California, we get about 13 to 18 cents of a property tax dollar. So people who pay property taxes think that goes to the city. It really doesn't. It goes to schools. Schools get over half of the property tax. The remainder goes to the counties for courts and other county functions. And so we get 13 to 18 cents on that. We get 1 cent of every dollar of sales tax collected. So it's really nothing. And then the big tax for us in California is the transit occupancy tax, your hotel taxes that you pay. A city gets 100% of those. So, when I have a city like this, I've doubled down. And so we've built several new, since I've been manager, resorts down through here and across here that bring in good chunks of money. So why? We have that money because that affords our peak staffing level. So then when we don't, I use a lot of contract, to give you an example. So on recreation, on parking, we have some seasonal workers, so teachers and others who have summers off that we can do. Our police and fire are not seasonal. And so in the off season, I'm able to take advantage of that time for training, policy reviews. We're an accredited police department, which has a whole level of hoops in it that we can enjoy because we have the seasonality. We do help our other jurisdictions. I feel that because we're a wealthier city and have that benefit, that we can help others. So we are very involved in our regional SWAT team, our regional bomb and drug task force, the opioid stuff we're involved in to help other cities because we're staffed just a little better. We're more aggressive on those enforcements in the off season. And that's where we're really thick. We're really thick in public safety and recreation and tourism services. And so that's how you do it. Yes.
With an increasing number of local communities seeming to move more into the tourist industry as you're very successfully done, do you see any new or expanding challenges between the interests of the local community and then the interests of these sort of transient tourist communities? Do you have any conflicts between the two, between what might best serve one and the other, and which do you, in your personal opinion, prioritize, the more profitable or the more sort of sedentary?
That is a question I'm asked by city council members often. So that's true. When you have a tourism community, the body politic are the people who live year round. The government, so 67% of our funding comes from tourism, the tourist, the non-citizen. But that doesn't mean that's who I work for, right? You have to work for the citizen, because that's who elects the city council and it's their community. I think the current thought in that, and the Wall Street Journal's done several articles on this, is that, first of all, Instagram has raised tourism and destination popularity to infinite problems. So, for example, Zion National Park. My family went there this summer. I'd only heard of Zion National Park in the past through Instagram and my friends on social media sharing their pictures of their family trip to Zion National Park. And I went, oh my God, I got to go to Zion National Park. And I did. So the Zion National Park is up hundreds of %, and they can't handle it. And so communities such as ours as well, who are more mature destinations, and there are far more mature destinations than us that are getting swamped. And so you're starting to see communities like ours go through destination management. You're seeing countries, I think it was just the Netherlands, actually passed a cap on the number of tourists that would be involved, and they're setting fees for tourists to walk into certain communities. They're actually managing the destination. And so we just partnered with a few of our cities in our county on a tourism management plan. And how do we actually manage our destination? How do we promote areas of the county that are less traveled to make them more Instagram worthy? And communities like ours, less traveled because we're already overwhelmed and the people have had enough. And when I'm selling classic California in this wonderful beach town where you can take your shoes off and sip some wine that just grew over the hill, and the last thing you want to do is be bumper to bumper on the 101 freeway going through town. That doesn't jive, right? You'll see a littered beach, or people, you not be able to get through the sidewalk because it feels like the big city you just came from to get away from. That is probably my biggest challenge, is that managing the dichotomy of maintaining attractiveness to a visitor and a resident. Now, a place that you love to visit becomes a place that you want to live. And places you want to live are places where you want to work and business wants to invest. There's actually a cycle. And that's another thing I've been preaching across the state is successful management of tourism communities begets more residents, begets more business, and it's a cycle, but there's ways you feed and manage that. And that's just kind of a new theory that we're all starting to talk about in communities like mine.
Just expand a bit more on that cycle. Does it ever, flip a train by? What kind of businesses are coming in? Are they tourist-related businesses, or are these more?
So we are trying to, I'll say, steal businesses from the Pacific Northwest and Silicon Valley. So Silicon Valley is about 2 hours and 40 minutes north of us. We're still relatively affordable to them. And so my sale is if you're a tech company getting rolling and you can pay $8 a square foot in Silicon Valley or $3 a square foot and surf at lunch in my city. And you're right we're on the same damn highway, 101. And that's where I think the whole public sector is a player in economic development. And I think that we can argue that in the halls of this building, how engaged government be in the private sector and private industry. But I can tell you, when I have policies that favor investment, and I work with my colleague cities of larger industrial areas to incentivize through permit fees or guaranteeing how quick a permit will go through, building the appropriate housing so that city has the employees for that company have a place to live, how we market ourselves as a place that's attractive to their business, how we partner with Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which is the university in our area, to have courses that enrich certain students and provide a workforce for those groups. How I invest in our sidewalks, our pier, our cleanliness, our facilities so they're attractive. Those are things that government needs to do so the private sector chooses to invest. And so I would submit that in certain situations, cities invest first to get private investment second. And that's debatable, but I think we've tried to position ourselves. And I've tried to work with my colleagues who, I'm not going to have a big tech company in Pismo Beach. We don't have that space. But I do have some buildings downtown that could be second and third stories with top floor lounges for employees and barbecue decks, and that's attractive to millennial workers. I have the ability to build some housing that's attractive to millennial workers. And so that's kind of where I'm focused. Yes.
How do you, obviously this is a management job, but there's things you're clearly passionate about, whether it's homelessness or addressing things like drought crisis. How do you balance your everyday activity, your everyday responsibilities, and also emergency responsibilities with things that you as like a person may want to accomplish?
That's a great question. And to give you an example of one of you asked about my day. So let me talk about what a typical day is. And I'll talk about how I do that. The thing I'm most passionate about is people. I actually enjoy people. I enjoy seeing people be their best. I enjoy developing and lifting people up and serving them to see what they become. And when you have that philosophy, I actually don't do any work myself. I'm talking to you all right now like I'm doing all this stuff. There's an amazing, talented group I get to be part of that do it. And I have an amazing group of colleagues I get to work with that do it. And so to a typical day, I spend, in general, now my office is calling me. So I spend a good part of my week with council members. So that's because, remember, that's my authority vests in the citizen elected to city council. It's their city. I'm basically the butler of their home, right? I oversee the staff, I maintain the garden, the kitchen, but it's their city. And I'm always humble about that. Otherwise, you're out of there. And so I spend... My Monday is all with the council. So I spend about 6 hours of Monday. I spend the first hour and a half with the executive team checking in on the week, what's going on, where are people, what's our focus, kind of, hey, break, the beginning of the week. And then I meet for another 6 hours with council members after that, talking about the council. Our council meets on Tuesdays. I want to make sure they understand the agenda. I want to make sure they understand any new laws I'm recommending, any financial information in the agenda. And then I wrap that day just with some of my own, looking at my email box and that kind of thing. As the week progresses, I try and check in every other week with one of the 9 executive team members. I give them each an hour and a half, and so I make sure I have that time on my calendar. That isn't for me to tell them what to do, it's for me to listen to them about what they're doing, back to your point, and encourage and motivate them. So I tell them often, I don't run the city, the executive team runs the city, the police chief, the public works director, the fire chief, the director of tourism and events. They're all running the city. I'm there to support them. I'm there to lift them up. I'm there to resource them. So in my hour and a half with them, I'm asking, do you have the resources you need? Do you have any employee challenges? How are you doing personally? How's your family? Can I help you with anything there? What are you focused on for the next 2 weeks, 6 months, 1 year? Now, granted, we're all working on the city council's goals. We have a professional goal setting that we do that sets our work plan for 2 years, but there's other things you're working on too. And so that's how I use those meetings. The bulk of my time, council members is probably 10 to 15 hours, department head executive team check-ins are 10. Then I have a lot of community meetings. So I'll definitely meet with community groups. So there's homeowner associations, the Chamber of Commerce, downtown business owners, there's that. Then there's regional things I'm involved in. So the Homeless Coalition, the Airport Authority, there's a group it's called our Hourglass Project, where we're talking about this economic development stuff and how we're making sure we have housing for students who graduate who can be employees. We're building housing for them. We're building the training for them. We're doing the appropriate business attraction. So I'm involved in a lot of that, and that's a regional thing. Most of that work's not for Pismo Beach, but that's okay if I lift up the county and lift up other economies that benefits us, because we're the place where people want to hang out. And so I spend that kind of time in my week. So I would say my day is 7 to 8 hours programmed. If I showed you my calendar, with about 3 hours of free time. That's an 11-hour day. Now, there are some days where I'll block out larger time for me just to rest. I mean, you can't. I work about 50 to 55 hours a week. I try to keep it right in there. I can't do it at 40, but I try and flex that. I try not to work on weekends. But to answer your question overall is you have to believe in people, and I make sure our people are experts on the issues and that they can teach me and that I can support them. As I lift them up and send them out and cheer them on. The last thing I do as a city manager, I think, I like to say that the staff and the community are the earth, if you will, and all good things happen in the sea and the land, and they're productive. Politics, bad ideas, bullshit are the sun. That's the radiation that can ruin all that good stuff. And so as a city manager, I try and be the atmosphere. I try and protect our city staff, the good community groups, the service clubs, the small businesses that are investing from garbage, from negativity, from bad politics, from fear, and really try and get in there and help them. And I take that on myself so they don't have to worry about it. Not a lot of managers might describe it that way, but I think that is different. I take that ownership to help everybody. Other questions? Yeah. Are you inspired from this or not?
Oh, yeah,
All right.
Clearly, Pismo Beach is a well-managed city.
Some would say not so clearly, but thank you.
How can we transfer this governance model to mid and big cities? Like how can we, when you see a big city, what are the biggest challenges, or how can we obtain a governance model similar to Pismo Beach?
Well, I think the governance model, the council manager form of government works. And so it's just a matter of it always starts and stops with the city council. I always say that, it's there. So who they hire and the investment they allow their manager to have in the community and in the city staff make a big difference. And so if you hire a professional manager, you mentioned I'm a credentialed manager. Council should only hire, and you should only work in governments with a manager who has their master's degree, who is involved actively in the ICMA and in the League of California Cities, which I'm very involved in, that prescribes good government. It's easy enough to look up. And like I said, whatever you do, look up the CEO of the organization you're looking to work for. Check out their background, look at the headlines, find out what kind of person that is, look at the stability of the board, look at the financial stability of the organization. Those are the things I would tell you. Those will give you barometers to whether it's a good organization or not. And then seek these people's help. They know where we all are. And so if one of us is in the neighborhood, we'll tell you if that's a good organization or not, or what we know about it. Now, how do you replicate good government? That's just on, I think, being accountable to your own values and virtues. So, I think the council manager form of government is sound. It's just a matter of what the council manager is doing with it, to answer your question. I think there are governments who make some really poor decisions. There's a city just down south of me that just fired their city manager after 5 months. It's a tragedy. He was it was his first time as a city manager. He was a community development director in a city in California, moved his family up there and everything. And the city council, something got into him, I don't know, but they fired their city attorney, they fired their city manager, they are under audit and they're not being forthcoming. So something isn't right. And those are usually symbols of bad things, but it starts with that. So it's kind of a simple answer, but I think the council manager form of government's important. I think an organization is committed to ICMA's guidelines and the League of Cities guidelines for that area, and they're committed to good government. You can smell that out pretty quick. And then I think for those of us who have good government, we need to call out those who don't. And that can be controversial because you don't want to look in somebody else's sandbox. Lord knows I don't want our city managers going and telling me what I'm doing right or wrong in the newspaper, but we need to call out bad government and challenge it and make sure that we root it out. To that end, I'm on our committee for professional conduct in California. And if I see colleagues doing something wrong, I always give them the benefit of the doubt first and call them. Say, hey, are you sure you should be in that space? Are you sure that was what you wanted to do? Maybe I misunderstood what you did. Keep walking me through what you did. Oh, I didn't realize it looked that way. Or, okay. Well, next time you might want to, that kind of thing. But if they get effusive or evasive, or I might ask a few more questions, and then I might call a colleague and go, "Do you notice? Does this something not look right around here?" And then I'll try and call the person again and say, "Hey, this doesn't really look good. What can you tell me? And hopefully we can try and help them out. But if they don't, then I'll turn that over to be looked at, and potentially to their city council. Because a bad apple, man, it spoils the whole batch. Once people lose confidence in government or in their city, it's very hard to get back. Yeah.
So, Greg, you've been tasked with implementing the city council's agenda, but you're also not beholden to this popularity contest by which elected officials are.
That's right.
So I'm curious as to the latitude that city managers have to maybe engage in more innovative and or strategic mechanisms of carrying out those platforms, and maybe like your participation in that.
So it comes from the council, right? So the latitude I have to be risk-taking and a buccaneer out there, comes from them. I'm their employee, and I have to always remember that. And so many managers only meet with council members once a month. I do not understand that. I meet with mine every week because of my authority and my freedom and my ability to execute come from them. I want them to know what I'm thinking, where I am, and where I'm going to be on Friday. That gives me ultimate freedom to do what you said. And my colleagues and I debate that. So over time, then the council learns to trust me, and they learn that I have their best interests in mind. And as I'm in the community, I'm always very reverent to the council. I speak of them, Councilmember so-and-so, Councilmember so-and-so. I compliment them in speeches I give about their vision and their, but I mean that because they allow us to take risk. We're doing some incredible capital. We just rebuilt our pier. We're rebuilding a huge public safety facility. We're tearing out an 18 block. We have 2 downtowns, and so one of them we're doing the entire streetscape, all the infrastructure, the water, the undergrounding utilities, amazing projects for a city our size that we're doing. And that builds confidence when you execute those. So I think to answer your question, you have to know what cards you have. And there are times, I'll be very honest with the group I'm working with. I'll say, on that one, I got a pair of 2s and a pair of 4s. I can't do a whole lot for you. There was an area where some developers wanted to try and build. And I said, I wouldn't touch that part of land with a 10-foot pole. Well, what if and I just said, no. I said, you're welcome to buy it and turn a development application in, but I'm not. Well, could you? No, because I know that area, the council, they want to build like on the other side of it looks like this. No, council's not going to, we just bought all this to be a 12-mile hiking and biking preserve, which will open in the spring. So like outdoor, this is really cool. There's one over here I was like, no, that's not going to work. There are some issues. I was just telling Ben yesterday, it's funny, the things, I call them zero world problems. So when you live in a place like this, you're fed, you're safe, you have an ocean view, you have unlimited supply of wine, what are your problems? What are you bitching about? Oh, people find them, believe me. So I call those zero world problems because all your first world things are taken care of. So our zero world problem, you can see that we have all these beautiful bluff top parks, okay, and is dogs off leash. People believe that they don't need to leash their dog, that their dog is as nice to everybody as it is to them. Well, dogs off leash end up being a problem. They knock over seniors, they knock over kids, you're sitting on a picnic bench, they go eat your sandwich, they dump in the bushes and the owner doesn't want to deal with it. It gets so in our community, it's kind of percolated as this pain issue. And so I've been telling people, please leash your dog, please leash your dog. So in the last few months, I walk the community a lot. I think you have to be hands-on. I'm not hands-on on what our department heads, I tell you, run the city. I don't. I empower them, as I said earlier, but I at least want to see the results of their decisions and the fruits of their labor and what they're doing. And I'll look around, do I see graffiti? How does the street look? What's the streetscape look like? I'll pop in businesses. How was your week this week? How often do you see a city employee doing something for you that looked good? You see anything bad? I just kind of person on the street kind of thing. You get a lot of intel that way. And I try, and it's good for you to walk, right? My Apple Watch tells me I got to walk as I get around. So I've been walking neighborhoods where I know the dogs are off leash. And I'll walk up, and I'm pretty public. I mean, I'm in the news. I'm on TV a bit. So if you don't, but a lot of people don't know who you are, which is fine. So I'll walk up and say, excuse me, your dog makes me uncomfortable. Would you mind putting on a leash? I'll say that. And 4 out of 5 times I get it, and they keep walking. I go, no, really, I'm nervous about your dog. Can you please leash it? I believe we have a leash law in this community. Can you leash your dog? F off. I'll get like this just vow, like nasty. I'm like, I used to be taken aback by it, and now I'm like, So then I'm like, hi, I'm the city manager, and I highly recommend you put your dog on and most people don't know a city manager, they still go, you know. And I'm like, please, put your dog on a damn leash, it's the law, and I enforce it. And at that point, usually the person is embarrassed, and they don't know what to say, so then they just blurt absurdities or foul things. And they may put their dog on a leash, most of the time they still don't, to which point I say, I tried to be kind, I introduced myself, I'm now calling our motor officer on her cell phone, and you'll be getting a ticket. At which point they continue to swear because they don't believe it. And the motor officer will be there in about 6 minutes, and I follow them. It just drives them crazy. So I can see where they're going. If they go into their house, I stand outside and we'll figure them out. That doesn't, I usually catch them, but, and then they're like, what are you doing? Now, how do I have time to do that? Well, I do that in my 45-minute walk. But the point is, back to the whole council and how much leeway do I have? So we started getting like complaints a lot from seniors. They don't feel safe in our parks. A family said their kid got knocked down. The guy threw a ball at his dog, and the dog knocked over this little toddler and bloodied his nose, and just it's crazy. And then I see this rudeness of the owners, which tells me they've gotten completely arrogant that they think they can do whatever they want, and I don't like that. So I told the council, I said, let's get this. You want it? And they're like, yeah, we need to get in there. Well, a council member is not going to go out there and be aggressive and enforce. That's not popular because they have to get reelected. A city manager, however, I don't get elected. We have a problem. We need to reclaim our parks and then have a reasonable talk about what we can do. Siri's recording me. So this is going to sound totally silly, but the way I'm like, we're going to fight this, we're going to do this, is I actually put undercover officers in our parks with their personal dog acting as dog walkers, and I'm stinging those people with off-leash dogs. Freeze, boom, ticket, So these people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my police department is stinging me for an off-leash dog, which is totally aggressive. I get it. In a day where we don't want police to be aggressive at all, but it's getting attention. And so at a community meeting I just had last week, 3 people came and I can't believe you're doing this. This is ridiculous. And I let them have their word. I let them talk themselves out. And I said, I think it's absolutely ridiculous too, that people can be so arrogant that think the law doesn't apply to them. People can be so self-focused on their need that they don't think of the others who are afraid to go to the park. I think it's a complete failure of a neighborhood and community that they couldn't solve this themselves. And now I have to spend taxpayer money to have an undercover officer, not on opioids, not on drug enforcement, not on gangs, but on you and your dog because you didn't follow the law. That's ridiculous. You get the, but that's bold because that could backfire on me. I mean, if the dog organizers get together and they go to a council meeting, but I've talked to each of the council members and they claim I got back to my poker hand. I think I got a full house on this one, or 4 aces. I mean, they're pretty resolute. And then once we get some compliance, then we'll start talking about, do we have dog off leash hours from 7 in the morning to 9 a.m. or something? And if you don't want to be around dogs off leash, don't go to the park between 7. That's reasonable. But you can't get to reasonable discussions and actually sit and talk until you have humility and compliance. Okay, now let's talk about ways we can have quality of life for everybody. But that's one where you got to kind of know what hand you have, and because it's still, I can't believe we're doing it, but it's working. People are talking about it. Dogs are on leashes.
So you're fairly hands-on, you're in the community, but I noticed you mentioned you live in Atascadero.
I do.
So a lot of these cities have residential requirements when you get these jobs, which I bring them up for students.
Do you still see that? Because the courts have routinely ruled those unconstitutional. You're kidding. For city employees?
Yes. Which I think really causes a problem if you establish a family in one community and then you get a job.
Yeah, that's illegal in California, actually. Yeah.
Although there are some of our city managers who, because they work in places like Laguna Beach or outside San Francisco, where their city co-buys their home for them, so that, the $1 million home is, $500,000 and the city owns the other half, but the downside is if you're there for a long time, you miss the half of the house.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of that. So some cities are buying housing for their city manager and some of their employees. Some cities are doing, so managers have caught on to that. Now they're doing equity sharing. So you share in the up. That's right. If the city's going to own, that's part of the deal because they're trying to house you and they want you. That's an interesting debate. So I do live in Atascadero because we lived there for 7.5 years. It's 24 minutes from City Hall to where I live. I've always lived in the community I worked in, but now. And I think that's a debate in my profession as well. I fundamentally believe if you're enforcing and writing law, you should be subject to it. I do. And so I'm not walking that right now. But we have no family here. My wife and I have 2 kids, they're 6 and 11, and I'm engaged. My son's Tiger Cub Scout leader, and my wife's a Girl Scout. Our whole support network is over a mountain. You know, I live over this hill. And so it's, you know, and so I think we had to decide that I'm not going to leave my church. I'm very involved. It's a big support system for us and our babysitters and so I do what any good husband does. I just blame my wife when the council members say, why aren't you living in Pismo Beach? I say, man, Debbie still just can't get there. It's really important to her to which that's true. But now to the flip side of that, when you're in public service, if you guys do this, it's hard to go to the grocery store. It's hard to get your hair cut. You know, forget that. The haircut's not a nice experience anymore because people, you know, your ice cream melts at the grocery store, so you pretty much can't buy frozen goods because you're inevitably stuck. When you want to go buy some wine or some Jack Daniels or something, you know, you got to secretly buy that because you don't want people looking at your cart, thinking things of you, posting on social media about how the city manager's an alcoholic or something. You know, you have to think about that stuff. When I bought my car, I drive a Lincoln MKZ hybrid. I actually had to think about what car, in what profession can you not just buy the car you want? Mine. You know, because it's right there. And so I'm like, I need an American car. It has to be a hybrid, so it shows I care about the world. Where was it made? It has to be nice enough that a council member or developer, if I put them in there, they feel safe in it and comfortable. But can't be too nice. Can't be German. Can't be the full packet. You know, it's ridiculous. But that's how you think, and more than just your car. And so living out of the community, actually, I enjoy now. I mean, when I'm home, I'm at church. I can't help those people. You know, in Atascadero, when I worked and lived there, you wouldn't believe I'm doing ministry and I'm trying to talk about the Bible and I'm getting hit up for a development permit or something. Like, well, call me Monday, man. You know, or in the store. And so I have actually enjoyed it. Back to, though, the council in Pismo Beach, we're at all major city events. I stagger when I'm so there are nights I'll stay late and I'll tell my family that. There are nights I'm home earlier to be with my family. There are weekend events that we go to, a lot of weekend events with my kids, as if it's our community, because it is. And so the council sees me so much, they forget that I don't live there. I do grocery shopping at times in Pismo Beach. I won't buy frozen goods, but I'll buy produce and breads and grains and things like that. I try and buy my clothes in Pismo Beach, so I'm seeing in stores. So that's kind of how I try and deal with it. Mm-hmm. I do go to church once in a while in Pismo Beach to that congregate. I know the pastor. Well, we have a few churches, but the big church, just to kind of be seen. So you play games like that.
Does it raise problems with the community, or do they just feel you're so connected?
Yeah, no. Yeah, and yes, and that's the thing. If you guys are in this profession and you don't live in the community, you have to work harder, for sure, because you don't have the osmosis, right? You're not on the soccer field on Saturday with the other parents. You're not in that Cub Scout group. You're not in that congregation. So you have to be more careful to insert yourself in. And then, frankly, you know, from an emergency standpoint, I've had to make accommodations with the sheriff and others for how I get to the community, if God forbid there's a problem. And so I've talked about if there's a big fire burning on the hills, it's cutting off and coming into the community, I have an agreement with the sheriff to get me by helicopter, serious, and fly me into Pismo Beach. I mean, it sounds extreme, but I've worked all that kind of thing out. You have to. Any other question? How are we doing on time? Are we late? That's okay. Yes, this will be great.
I visited Jim in his first job in Claremont as assistant city manager, and I came in and he's like, well, if you come in that night, I've got a city council meeting, so you'll have to come and watch that, and, you know, might be kind of boring. I was like, oh, that's fine, no problem. So I settled in for what I thought was a boring city council meeting, and I'm checking at the time my BlackBerry. Tells you how old it was. I'm checking my BlackBerry and everything, and they start the city council meeting, and the city manager talks for it and said, okay, time for the report from the assistant to the city manager, Jim Lewis. And he went into the report, went, probably, 30 seconds in, and a guy sitting about from here to there for me, he goes, Jim Lewis is a liar. And I was like, and he proceeded, and of course they banged the gavel, and I'll never forget it. His name was Mr. Noonan.
I look at the citizen.
He had
May I continue?
showed up just to say that.
I can't
Lewis
even.
a liar.
And then he
his
said,
boss's name was Glenn Southern, and he goes, he's a little Southern.
he's nothing but a little Southern. He's a liar. Because Glenn was trying to have me give a fresh presentation on something. I don't even remember what the issue was, but that's what you'll get. I haven't gotten that. A large part of that was because my mentor, I've learned a lot as I've gotten older and mentor others. I had some great qualities and some not so great qualities. I mean, he was very short with the community. He had a huge hubris. He would not admit when he was wrong. I in the community am very quick to apologize when I make an error. I'm very humble. I'm puffed up today because I'm excited about my profession and I'm telling you guys this, but I'm always honoring of the council. If we make a mistake, I'm very quick to apologize. I rarely have people meet in my office. I go to them. It's things like that that you can do that show that you're a servant. And my mentor was a lot of great things, but he wasn't some of that. And so you learn from those you affiliate with. Observe the good and bad in people. And then for yourself, measure what you take from that. There's both things you can learn. So anyway, thanks for, that was funny.
The point of the story is it's in your face. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I was in state government, I think.
Yeah, you working in Florida.
I put my BlackBerry away and paid attention. That made it a lot more interesting.
It's a great profession. You have a lot of decisions to make, but I'll tell you, I would really encourage you, if you think you want to go into environmental this or social justice issues or work at the state or federal level, this is an amazing profession where you get to interact at the state and federal level and make a real difference to a lot of people. So good luck to you all. I'll leave my cards here if you want to grab them. You can always reach out to me. I love talking with students. And I can connect you when you're freaking out in April. If you decided to do this, call me. I'll reassure you. I'll connect you to people and try and help you get some work, and we'll go from there. Thank you.